so exciting. So this is our very first show of the Inner Shift podcast. We're going to explain a bit about the name and why we chose it because it has a few different meanings for us. And Amy Friesen joins me for the first one, my partner in this, and she loves talking about her feelings. Don't you, Amy?
It's my favorite part of the day. I'll talk about feelings all day long, Kimothy.
Yeah, I doubt that. I think I'm forcing you to, but we're also going to be joined by other women, and we're going to have guests on the show who are subject matter experts because this is a show about mental health. And as Amy likes to say, we're just going to talk the shit out of everything, and we're going to be raw and genuine, and we're not going to pretend that we're fine. We're not ever going to use that term, probably. Oh, no, how are you doing? I'm fine. No, that's not what this show is about. So, first of all, let me introduce Amy and what she does, because in addition to being a best selling author on the topic, she helps families navigate what I would expect, Amy, is one of the hardest things that a family has to do, which is care for their seniors, and you help navigate families through that. So why don't you tell us what Tea and Toast does? Because you're the boss and you've been doing this for a really long time. So in our hometown of Ottawa, Amy is quite famous for her work. So what
Well,
do you do, Amy?
well, I think you've summed it up. I'm the boss. No, just
Yeah.
joking. But you're right. It is one of the hardest things that people have to deal with. We're talking to people that are constantly in burnout. I'm talking to people that are trying to figure out elder care. We in Ottawa help people find senior living and resources. But all of these people are struggling out there. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this new show because we're going to talk about women's mental health. We're going to talk about caregiving and all sorts of different things. Caregiving is just my expertise, but we have lots of experts coming on. And so that's why I wrote the book. It's called Breadcrumbs, and it's about piecing together the whole situation for people because people don't want to talk about it, to be unfortunately.
And this is the second version of this book, right?
Yeah, you grow, Kimothy. So I had to rewrite the book because I didn't like the messaging. Not that I didn't like the messaging. I wanted it to be broader. I wanted it to be cleaner for people because this is a first introduction into this whole elder care situation, right? And so I wanted to help as many people as possible.
So, two things I wanted to ask you about because you have talked to me before about being sandwiched because a lot of the people dealing with their seniors are still dealing with kids at home. But the other thing is that it can be a very difficult time to find the right place for the right person. So, first of all, can you just tell me what you mean by you're sandwiched?
Back right in the middle with the lettuce is what I mean. So you've got young kids or dependent kids.
Right.
Doesn't really matter what age. We help people that have, right now we're helping someone who has a 60-year-old child, but they have a MS, right? And so they're still caring for them though. So technically speaking, but generally we've got people in my age range, right, that are caring for younger kids or dependent kids, kids going through university and college and whatnot. A lot of kids are moving home again now. And then they're also dealing on the other side with the elder care with either one or both of their parents, one or both of their in-laws. I've had people call themselves double decker, right? Because they're dealing with multiple people in each spot, really.
Yeah, so in the city that I'm in, Fort Worth, Texas, right now, so I am not in Ottawa, but the city in which is basically the hometown for both of us. And obviously, this goes far and wide, but I don't think it's unusual for jurisdictions to have shortages of senior care because of that booming population. So, are you running into that?
So
Finding places?
So many shortages. Yeah, so long-term care always has a waiting list. It's been like that forever. But the scary thing now is that retirement homes, which are not the same as long-term care, do offer, many of them offer the same amount of care as a long-term care home, but they are now getting waiting lists. They're not as substantial, but they're there. And we've got people waiting months and months right now. And that's scary as a system because I've been in the system for 20 years and I've never really actually seen waiting lists like this in retirement living, which is, alarm bells for all of us in the industry.
In one of our upcoming episodes, we're going to talk to one of our colleagues about financial stress. And certainly being here in Texas right now, I do know that Canada is getting some interesting financial stresses from its neighbor, but we also had housing stresses already. And again, kids are staying at home longer because of their financial stresses. So, just so that our audience knows, we're going to dive deeper into financial stress and some management techniques soon. But I did want to mention that we are a show by women for women. And Amy, I know when I was doing work with one of our other colleagues that we're going to meet in the upcoming weeks, women take on a lot of the heavy lifting. And so burnout for them must be something that you see on a regular basis.
I see it all the time. And usually I see it that people haven't planned to not go into burnout. They haven't put things in place. And then there's the general fatigue of like, as a woman trying to remember and know everything. I talk to my husband about this all the time, I'm the one that's remembering where the appointments are, and I'm the one that's remembering the grocery list and all that stuff. And it's like stuff that vibes in our brain all the time. But when people move into burnout and are starting to be incapable of doing things, all of these extra things fall by the wayside. And then they end up in this huge problem at the end of the day. And it's never just the one thing. It's not just the caring for their senior loved one. It's not just the caring for their, I have a 7-year-old, right? It's not just caring for my 7-year-old. It's that plus myself, plus my work, plus the groceries, plus the house, plus the husband, plus the pets. And it's just piles and piles and piles. And so people just need to be a little bit more proactive so they don't get there, or they can dig out faster if they are more proactive.
Yeah, and I know about burnout. If anybody hears Buddy talking, he's contributing to this. The reason why I'm in a hotel in Fort Worth, Texas, I was here to visit family. But for those that don't know, 3 years ago on June 10th, I was T-boned in a very serious car accident. And for the last, well, since Labor Day, so we're now at 5 months, I've been living in my SUV because my rent and I lived at Lansdowne Park, for those of you from Ottawa. All my rent and utilities was getting close to about $3,000 a month. And while I still am working things out with an insurance company for an accident that I did not cause, I decided that, spending what, $36,000 a year on a house was causing me stress. It was causing me to feel like I had to keep up, and I didn't have the physical ability to do some of the things in my previous job. And certainly I didn't have the mental capacity to be doing what I used to do. I mean, no one's going to put me on television at this point in my life when, I can't remember a 2-minute script off the top of my head. So I've been traveling around. I do come back in April, May, and June to my favorite city for the Canadian Tulip Festival, among other things. But I couldn't take it anymore trying to be the person that I used to be and trying to just keep up with everything with injuries. I was walking with a cane for a long time. Sometimes I still need to if I push it too hard. And so I know exactly that. And I have pledged to be, I'm always honest with Amy, but we're on private conversations, but I've pledged to be completely honest in this forum. And the reason why we wanted to start this podcast is no more bullshit. I mean, life can get really hard. And sometimes you're not at your best. And I certainly have had times where I was not at my best. And, you can have all kinds of secondary issues related to the fact that you're really struggling. I mean, it can impact, I'm not married, I gave up on that hobby, but, it can affect your relationship, it can affect your parenting, it can affect your job performance, your finances. I lived above a Whole Foods, and when I would get really bored because I couldn't do much, I would walk next door and buy a lot of really expensive things and then pretend that I was going to cook a great meal and then realize that it was still all in the fridge a couple days later. But, I was just
Burnt.
looking for anything that would give me some kind of excitement because my life was all about which therapy is today and which, I have a psychotherapist, I have a physiotherapist, I have doctors, I have, and so I was just looking for something fun to do and I couldn't do much, so I would go to Whole Foods and buy really lovely things and then lose the will to cook. So those are some of the things I just wanted to say, Amy, before we move on. Here are some of the things that we're going to talk about in the next little while. Menopause madness. That was me. Financial freedom is an upcoming show, and also how to deal with financial stress. We're going to talk about grief and loss.
Mhm.
It still amazes me that if you work in a workplace with, any kind of major structure, it's like, okay, so your child is worth 5 days off, your parent is worth 3 days off, and gosh, when my dad died, it was years before I felt grateful to have him in my life, and it didn't bring me a pain or a hiccup in my day when I would reflect on that.
I would
We're
tell
also
you,
going to talk about we're
I
also
was
going to talk about why our pets mean so much to us and how when something happens to them, the deep grief that we feel. And just the last example that I wanted to give, because it's my favorite topic, as you know, life after divorce. So that's just some of the ones that we have coming up. And uh, yeah, life after divorce. I liked it so much I did it a couple times. And the guests that we're going to have on have pledged to be as raw and open as Amy and I are pledging to do. What do you think is going to be your favorite topic, Amy?
Uh, there's lots of topics that really hit home. What I was going to comment though on, as well as the grief and loss, there's a lot of women out there specifically grieving parents and family that they have lost that are not dead. So there's a lot of grief that people are going through from separations, from dementia diagnosis, from grieving the life that you thought you were going to have and now you don't. And so I think that's going to be really important to a lot of women as well, because I don't think a lot of people realize that that might be what's happening. But I can tell you in my day job, we see a lot of folks struggling with cognitive difficulties, and those caregivers, they're grieving because it's not the way they wanted it to be. It's not what they thought it was going to happen.
Well, I can say, I mean, I went through grieving the life that I had,
Hmm.
grieving the physical strength that I used to have.
Yeah.
Now I look at mountains, I can't climb mountains. So I lost hobbies that were sporting related. Um, I don't anymore, but at first I thought, and I lost my pride because I was walking around with a cane or with walking sticks. So it's just like a big fat symbol to me, I thought, was that, yeah, I'm broken. And now I take pride in it because I deal with a lot of accessibility issues in my work. For example, with the Canadian Tulip Festival, we work really hard to have accessible events, including audio tours and
Hmm.
tactile tours of things. So it's given me, I think, significant leg up in organizing events because now I process our aging population needs accessibility, people with injuries need accessibility. So that has been really important to me as well.
Yeah,
And
you don't want to see me around people that have throw rugs. Like I'm in the same ball game, but because I work with seniors, right? I can walk in somewhere and there's a loose throw rug or like a wonky step and like you can see it, right? So I think that's important to highlight as well. It's, because you had and you are dwindling on not having them as much anymore, but accessibility is so important. And I think that a lot of people are in your boat where they need a little extra help. They're independent, they just need a smidge more help, but
yeah,
they're embarrassed or they don't ask for it, or they just accept what is. I have colleagues that are in Ottawa and they're changing that for, housing and things like that because people just need a bit of a tweak. It's not that they can't stay at home. It's not that they have to move necessarily. It's just they need someone to pay attention and help a little bit.
Well, and for your clients too, I mean, the shower became terrifying for me
Yep.
until I got some things that helped me in there because I broke my nose not long after the accident because I slipped and because I had a brain injury, my balance was not
Mm,
what it used to be. And
yep.
down I went and broke my nose. So I walked around looking, like I had been in a Rocky movie, which is also humiliating to be out in public with black eyes and people like, oh, I wonder what happened to her. And one of the reasons that I know that we wanted to do this is mental health with women, mental health challenges with women is so common. So I know that I looked up some of the stats, but I'll share them here. And separate from that, we know that it's even worse for women between 18 and 24, but almost a third of Canadian women have basically judged their own mental health to be poor.
Mm,
And a lot of those women have turned to a pharmaceutical solution because society is just not working in a way that makes any other option kind of work for them. And one of the things that we want to do with this podcast is I was joking earlier that Amy loves talking about feelings, but it really does help when you know that you're not the only one dealing.
I mean, that's part of my whole educational platform is just to
Yeah.
tell the women that are watching this, our caregivers, you're not alone and we see you. We're struggling with probably the same crap, right? Like it's just we're all in the same boat. Sure, we have different things. We treat them different ways. We're all there. It doesn't I mean, it's a general statement, I guess. It doesn't matter what you're struggling with. It's all in that mental health range and there's other people. And so we're gonna talk about it and we're gonna show people that you and I are messed up, but everybody else is messed up too.
We're just messed up in a really cute and adorable kind of way.
Right? Yes.
And the reason why we chose to launch this on International Women's Day at an event celebrating that in Ottawa is that we do want to focus on the issues impacting women. Now, I know that maybe I will get criticism because I started working on this before the car accident and then I was kind of distracted by things like, learning to walk again. And it was, oh, you're going to do it just about women? Well, why not? We are entitled to have a show that just talks about women. And, I heard from some people who said, well, doesn't that kind of leave out other people? It's like, well, think of how many things women are left out of sometimes.
Yeah.
So I don't have any problem with that.
But
And
I would say though, Kimothy, right? Like this, we're wanting to talk to women in general, but that doesn't mean that men can't listen. That doesn't mean that it's unavailable. And if you have a woman in your life, maybe you should listen. Maybe we have a whole other demographic that we'd like
yeah.
to talk to. So if any men are listening, like, you know, as women in your lives, we go through and are dealing with mental health stuff. We're dealing with trauma. We're dealing with menopause and perimenopause and grief and all the stuff that my husband is terrified to deal with, to be honest. But what I do is I just keep him in the loop and he's there and he's supportive, right? But like what we want to do is provide extra information. And I'm sure there's going to be nuggets for men as well. But we wanted to give this a safe place and say, hey, women, come and listen, take some pointers if they're like, take what you can from our show, know that you're not alone. And then anybody else that gets extra out of it, like is all gravy, right?
Well, I mean, I was doing perimenopause at the same time that my daughter was doing puberty. So imagine that household.
That's
But we
so
will
much.
have a world expert on the show, and I've already spoken to her about this. And it's amazing her following around the world because menopause, for example, is such an important thing. But you're right, it will give the people who love us tools
Hmm.
if they watch a show like that. Because when it was happening to me, I thought I was normal
Yeah.
because I didn't know that my behaviors were, you know, changing in terms of my anger was faster, my frustration was faster. You
Because
know,
your hormones are effed up, right?
yeah,
Like,
and depression about, okay, now I'm old and,
mm,
dealing with that kind of feeling like, because I'm, how old am I? I'm 56. I had to think about that because I always like do the, to get my head around it, I do the I'm almost 57 and then I forget and it's like, am I already 57 or no, no, I'm still 56. And it is and now they're finding all these health consequences of do you do HRT? Do you not do hormone replacement? They're finding all of these health consequences that impact your mental health.
mhm.
So some of the stuff that we're going to talk about is physical things that can impact your mental health. And that's a very real thing. But there's also mental health issues that can affect your body.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I were talking before we started recording about I was a little stressed about some family situation. And so then I didn't get a good night's sleep.
Hmm.
And sleep is dramatically impacted by a lot of things, including menopause. And then when you're not getting a good night's sleep, you're just not able to do the things that we started talking about in the beginning, which is all of those sandwich responsibilities of the two generations on either side. And we do know that kids are staying at home longer because it's so expensive out there
It
to try
is. Yeah.
and get their own place to live. So you're getting kids well into their 20s who are still in your household instead of having, like, do you remember when there was Freedom 55? like, we can
It was
only
just
imagine.
joking. It was just joking for a while. I
Yeah,
was gonna
Freedom
say
55.
I was
Freedom
gonna say
from
for
what?
sleep, for sleep as well. Like I've got four kids. It feels like
I was
forever.
like, what?
I have so many. No, I have one kid, but I also have four animals and a husband that snores. So, the sleep is limited in this house. Um,
Yeah.
you're right though.
So
It's so important.
I know that I wanted to start this, and I'm just gonna say a cute little story is that when I started this, the man who hired me at the TV station when I was 20 volunteered, he's now long since retired, volunteered to be our researcher and has gathered 100 topics complete with, articles and attached ideas. And so, this legendary veteran journalist decided that this was so important because he's from a house full of women and
Hmm.
raised some and has been married for probably as long as I've pretty much been alive, I think.
Hmm.
And the topics that he was coming up with are so exciting for me to share with our audience. But when I mentioned to you what I wanted to do, and I was talking to the ladies that we hung around with, I don't think I know why you wanted to do this
I don't know why I
personally.
want to do it. I'll tell you, when you said, Amy, you can swear, that was a big ticket item for me,
Yeah, big bonus there because otherwise she's not truly Amy.
right? I've been on my own path of finding authenticity. So now I wanted to do this because I have another podcast that I was doing, which is same demographic. It's all of you that are listening to us, and it's just a little skewed into caregiving. But honestly, most of us are caregivers in some way.
Yep.
And if you're not caregiving for someone else, you are probably caregiving for yourself, or you should be. And we're going to try to teach you that.
Hmm.
But I just felt
Right.
like let's combine effort. Let's talk to these folks, see if we can help them along and really, add some humor to it because that's how I deal with, things in my life. I feel like there's a lot of serious stuff out there and you can equally talk about the serious stuff, but have a little bit of lightness added in. And that's my ticket. That's what I'm good at. So if I poke fun at you, Kimothy, during our time together, it's for the ladies, really.
Yeah, and it's not going to be any different than any other day. And that's an interesting thing too is uh I don't think many days go by that you and I don't text or message or call or something like that. And one of the things that I think is going to be really apparent about this show is that there is incredible support, but the first step is admitting that you need help. And women are terrible at that, aren't we?
Yeah.
Like, we're really, it's almost like, you had to, give up a piece of your soul to say to a friend, I'm not doing okay.
Well,
I'm really not.
it's super hard to ask for help,
Yeah.
right? So you don't want to ask for it. But then I tell you, just based on my own stuff and the things that I hear through caregivers, is that sometimes you actually don't know what it is. Sometimes you don't actually know what's wrong. And
Hmm.
I would tell you, as an advocate, I've had to advocate for myself and my child and my husband and my animals, and then I've had to advocate for clients and caregivers. It's exhausting, like, to be honest. And so when something happens with me and I'm just like, oh, for the love of crap, like, what is happening? Right. And it's
Yeah.
just, you're trying to advocate nonstop in our healthcare system, in general, whether it's chiro, massage, anything. And eventually you're just like, ah, not today, Satan. Like, it's like we're not doing it anymore. So it's exhausting to have to reach out because sometimes you don't even know what you're reaching out for.
No, it's true. And, uh, as a recovering perfectionist,
Mm,
it was really difficult for me to tell people that I had a brain injury. I mean, I had concussion syndrome and it was so bad that it impacted my hearing. So I had to wear hearing aids and kind of get through that, which wasn't that hard for me because I've always been a champion for accessibility issues. But when it's you,
mhm.
oh, that's a whole other thing.
Well,
And I mean, I tell this story, which I thought was funny at the time, but truly I was embarrassed. Is the last time I did live television, you can't wear a hearing aid in the ear that has the earpiece to the control room. And I accidentally announced a counselor in Ottawa who had won, and she eventually did, but not at that moment. And so I
Whoops.
couldn't hear the control room saying that it looks like so and
Mm,
so is going to win. All I heard was so and so and win. And I was so embarrassed and humiliated because I had tried so hard to hide the fact that I had a physical brain injury.
yeah.
And I think about it now as someone who I think my next life purpose, instead of trying to do that job anymore, is going to be working with you and the other women that are going to join this and like pulling that out of the darkness and saying, what I would say to somebody else is, why would you be embarrassed about a physical brain injury in a car accident you didn't cause?
Mm,
Yet when it's you, you're still looking around for other people to share it with who might understand because you don't want the whole world to know that, you know, you have a brain injury. And like, I can't remember half of the stuff I do in a day because my memory just hasn't come back in this way. And when you and I'm not going to talk about this particular subject here, but when you and I first connected on a subject that we shared, it was like, the sun had come out for me because I'm like, I know about this topic and I can actually discuss
mhm.
it with you because I didn't have anybody else that understood this topic at all.
Well, it was the same
And
thing that I felt, right? Like
yeah,
when we started talking a little bit more regularly, again, we won't get into it now because that's a whole other kettle of fish, ladies.
it's
Uh,
a whole show. It's a
it's
whole show.
it's like 12 shows.
Yeah.
But I will say the same thing. When you find people that understand what the hell you're talking about, and you don't have to explain why you feel a certain way, they just understand the concept of what's happening. It's so relieving because otherwise when you explain it you get weird actions or comments because people don't understand what you're going through, and so like they can't put themselves there. So they'll try to be helpful, but the comments aren't overly helpful because they can't put themselves in your shoes because they've never experienced it. I wouldn't say to our audience that we've experienced everything, but I would say between the two of us, we've had a good fair share of it. But that's why we were going to bring in certain experts to talk about it, because we do understand what people are going through. And I think that again, this is a safe place to share, and we're gonna tell you everything we know and everything we can find, and hopefully it will add that light into your life too.
Yeah, I hope so because the topic, we're not trying to be mysterious, it's just that's a whole other show, is that when you find out that, is it just me?
Yeah,
Like, am I the one seeing this situation? When you find out, no, it's actually not you. I mean, what a relief, right?
it's
And on the show, we'll talk about if you're watching this show, you might know that I was a outspoken person about childhood sexual abuse because it happened to me. And I will say that when I spoke out nationally, I mean, who does that, right? It was on Canada AM at the time. I'm like, okay, hundreds, if not thousands of people, including men, this is long before Me Too, spoke out. And at the point that I had spoken out, I thought, well, no one's really going to be interested in this topic, right? It's intensely private. And instead, I got all these letters saying exactly what you just said is, thank God I watched that segment on Canada AM and thought, I'm not alone.
yeah.
So that's what we want to do with this show, right? Is you're not alone.
We
And
want we want to validate women. We want to tell you that you're not crazy. We want, like,
yeah,
how many times has the two of us just felt like we're bonkers because we're dealing with something that
yeah.
is so private, and you're like, I don't know which person to share this with because I need an appropriate answer or an appropriate feedback. And like you walk around thinking you're nuts. And so more often than not, I've reached out to you or other friends for validation. Okay, here's the situation, tell me your thoughts. And like, I
Mhm.
think that I'm hoping that our show will be validation for a lot of people to say, okay, no, you're right. It is happening. It's real. Now, what are the next steps?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on a 20,000 kilometer drive across a continent because I just knew I had to get my shit together.
Oh, I thought you were running
And
away from me. No?
I'm coming back to you, baby. I'm coming back to you.
Damn it.
Actually, for everybody to know, Amy and I actually have camping reservations together already because we're so
Yeah.
excited to see each other for nice weather. And I don't have mosquitoes here in Texas, but I will adapt. I will adapt.
Well,
So we're
good.
looking forward to it. We don't have, a catchy way to end the show yet because it takes on a direction of its own. So I will let Amy wrap up this one and tease a little bit about what we're going to do every single week. We're going to do
Well,
this.
if there's one thing I love is being put on the spot. It's my
I
favorite,
know you love it and talking about your feelings,
right? All of it together. Let's
all
mush
of
it all
it.
together. I would say hang out with us for a bit. See
Yeah.
see what we're all about. I think that, over our time together, we're definitely going to hit on things that are going to affect and hopefully help to improve your life. And again, if it's not for you, it might be someone else in your life, because sometimes, when people come to me for my business and they say, "Oh, it's such a good service. My parents passed away. I don't need that." We say to them, "Okay, well, just now that you've heard of us, now you've heard our name, and now you know we exist, things will come up in the background, and then you'll send them over to us, right?" And so this is the same thing for the show here. you
Yeah.
know as we go along, you might not be in menopause, and you might be watching a menopause show with us, and either you're past it or haven't gotten there and it just doesn't quite apply or click. But then in your workplace, in your family, in something, somebody is going to come up and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling." You're going to be like, "Oh," and then you're going to be the light, and you're going to be able to pass this show to someone else.
Yeah. The years ago, I was on a Toronto show that was loosely called, like in terms of their tagline, Coffee Talk, right? So here in Texas, I get to go to the lobby and they make me my coffee. But I think it's like, you know what? Get a coffee. sit down with us. We have big news about radio as well that will be coming, and invest your time in feeling better and grab a
Yeah,
coffee, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Or tea,
As long
or
as you don't have to talk to anybody when you go to get the coffee, because you know me, I'm very introverted. And the fact that this show is going to be all over the place is a little scary for me, but I am not interacting in person. So apparently I feel good in my bubble. So
and just like that, my phone rang, even though I turned my ringer off. So the other thing that we're going to do is we're not going to pretend to be perfect.
oh, we're
You're
dying
going
with
to see
that.
our dogs. You're going to see not my child, who's now a very, very grown up adult, but you might see Amy's every once in a
I
while
might pop
wander
in.
in. So we're not aiming for perfection because we've been trying to do that for far too long, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I
It
can't do
doesn't
that
work.
anymore, Kimothy. It's just got to
Yeah.
be as people are going to love us for us, I'm sure of it, and we're going to love you guys for you guys. And I
Yeah.
think on that note, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for tuning in. We're hoping to have you back many, many times, time and over. And, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell thing to notify, and you will be first to know when we release our new episodes. And we're really excited to have you joining us. And we're really um, happy and pleased of what am I going to say, Timothy? See, I'm not perfect. So when I want to say is I'm really happy that you're going to give us a chance and let us into your lives so that we can maybe help you and we can maybe help your friends and loved ones. And if not, maybe we could just cry and swear together.
I think that's going to be every episode actually, but I
Yeah.
did want to say that the reason why we ask people to subscribe is right now we're volunteering. And the way that YouTube works is that if you subscribe, it's completely free for you to subscribe. It is how we can eventually pay for our researchers and our producers and grow. And
Mhm.
it doesn't cost you a thing. We're free.
Just send us some love. Send us some love.
And we want to feel the love. We want to feel the love. We're going to bare our souls.
Yeah, we sure are.
There's a cost to that.
Yeah,
Amy, I want to say how grateful I am for you.
I'm
You're
grateful for
amazing.
you. Let's
Okay.
do it. All right, ladies, let's do it. See you on the next
Okay.
show.